I am Yannick. I am one of the directors at the ME Volunteers. We, in short, provide advocacy and support to families living with special needs and disabilities. And I guess at times adults with disabilities as well, as we encounter them in our work, whether that's visible or invisible visibility with regards to mental health, something which I have suffered from. So when we talk about intersectionality, it falls within some of the things that I'm passionate about from experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yannick. Thank you very much for introducing yourself. If I'd like to move on to Viv, please, and welcome Viv to the panel. I'd love to hear all about what you do, Viv.
Hi, everybody. So I run an arts and crafts group as chair, and we run arts and crafts in the community, in deep levels of the community, using things like textile art, etc., among mainly older adults. And so a number of the people that who come to our events, which we work with in a forum style, are often people who may have disabilities that they identify and intersect with, along with all their other intersections, shall we say. And I also identify as a person who has had a number of matters that have occurred in my life, which I identify as being a disability, which you'll hear about in due course. And I also run the South East London Wool and Textile Festival, which is where our idea for doing community work emerged from. And I'm the chair of that as well.
Thank you, Viv. That's brilliant. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about the fair. Sounds amazing. Maya, would you like to go next?
Hi, my name is Maya. I'm 22 years old. Just studied at Royal Borough of University doing digital film production. I also have a disability called hemiplegia. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Maya. Looking forward to hearing about all the work that you've been doing at Ravensbourne. I'd like to welcome Julie, please. Julie, don't forget to unmute yourself.
I did forget. Thank you. It really is a pleasure to be asked to participate in today. There's been quite a lot said about what I do on the bio, but I'd like to kind of go a bit more deeper to say that I have lived experience of bipolar that can be quite disabling at times. I have a number of enterprises I'm developing, and I also do quite a lot of advisory work for number 10 Downing Street and also the Cabinet Office. My aim is that one day we will have a world where I would say disability is viewed upon by everybody as a social model, that it's not us that are disabling ourselves, it's society that disables us. And I've experienced that, and I'll talk a bit more about it in our session, but I've experienced race and disability discrimination, and that's why I'll set up organisations and enterprises so to challenge when a lot of our networks have disappeared, a lot of BAME organisations have gone. The list, you know, is endless of what's happened, but I've also had deep experience across the board, and that's enough for me.
Thank you, Julie. I'm really looking forward to, and I'm very interested in a lot of the work that you're doing around the social model, because I think you raise a really important point there, and I'd like you to touch on, if you would be happy to, maybe later on look at the environmental and the organisational model for disability as well. just help people that are on the webinar to understand what we mean by that, and how that impacts on the daily lives of individuals that, as you say, from a social model are considered disabled. Right, thank you so much to all of you. This is where I welcome the 4 of you to just speak. If you like, I'm going to give you the mic, a kind of fake mic in this instance, to speak for 10 to 15 minutes, really just explaining to us and sharing with us your experiences of what it's like to be of an ethnic minority, and also of somebody living with disability, and any other parts of your identity that you would like to include in that. When we talk about intersectionality, we're talking about all of our parts, and all of those that are, whether they've provided us with a privilege or whether they've provided us with barriers, as well. So if you'd be happy to, I would really like to ask Viv, perhaps if you might start this and take us through some of your experiences. Sorry, Viv, just before you go ahead, just to remind those of you that are in the audience and have joined us today, as all of the individuals have introduced themselves, obviously there are some who have had professional experience in advising organisations on this, and there are others that are speaking purely just from their own experience. So what we hope this conversation will be is an open dialogue for individuals to share how they feel, the experiences that they have had and lived with. And I think it's just important to remind you all of that, because this is a space of learning for everyone, really, learning about each other's experiences and disabilities as much as it is about expressing some of their own. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear before the presentation starts. So any questions, please do put them in the chat function if you can. And if there is if there's any pressing, I'll come to questions at the end. Just want to take a note from the. Okay, Eleanor, I don't know if you can see the chat. Yeah, if there's just a few questions in there, if you're able to look at that. Okay, so sorry about that, Viv. If I could welcome you then to talk a little bit about your experiences.
Hi. Well, going by everybody that I've seen today, I think I'm the novice of the group. My situation is well, I don't know if it's unusual actually. I started off my career as a qualified barrister, and I've worked variously for many, many years in that, or worked in that as my career. And then about 10 or 12 years prior to where we are now, I started to experience a number of issues with my back. And it became increasingly more profound over the time that I was working. And during that time, it was noticeable that having issues around spinal issues, which meant that I sometimes couldn't go to various places or execute things that people might like me to do in around my work, which you'd think in terms of the Equality Act would make things easy, at times were actually quite hard. What I think made things worse for me, and have indeed made things worse for me perhaps over a number of years, is that if you were to look at me, and I'm sure a lot of people who are here understand this already, and I'm probably saying things that people already know, is that you would not know to look at me that I had any disability. So what happened was, rolling forward, that I had a catastrophic breakdown of my spinal issue, which resulted in me, for a short period, I will say, not being able to walk. And through sheer fluke, I was able to get an operation that I won't go into, and that improved my condition, but left me with a chronic pain condition. And again, that is something, chronic pain I'm sure many of you will know, is again quite often something that you cannot see. It is specific to your own experience, and as a result of that, it's difficult for other people to perhaps sometimes to understand where you are in a journey. So examples of my situation have been where I've been in meetings, for example, and people have commented on the fact that I look uncomfortable, I might be perhaps not entirely engaged in what's going on, and that may actually be more likely to be the fact that I need to move around. So you might see me moving quite a lot, and that wasn't disinterest, that would be the fact that I was not comfortable. And equally, and I'm really, thanks Gemma for that, somebody has just said that they relate to that so much. I also can remember an example, and I can only speak of my own personal examples, of a situation where I was walking along, somebody that I apparently knew saw me, I had a hunched and miserable face, and again I was then castigated by that person who said, you didn't look at me, you didn't say hello, and I had to then explain, which I didn't personally think it was actually something I wanted to talk about, that I was in excruciating pain, because obviously pain control is relative, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad and sometimes it's non-existent, and that was where I was. Just prior, so while I was still sort of going through the chronic pain issue, and I hope people, I'm talking here about what it is to experience disability. So I'm perhaps going on about my ailments, shall we say, which again, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced, that talking about your ailments can be seen as being, particularly if it's unseen, as being something people don't always want to hear about, and sometimes you just have to talk about it. And in my case, I also identify, so I intersect as a disabled person with a spinal issue and chronic pain. I also intersect as a cancer survivor. So the two things are slightly unrelated, but slightly related. So during my cancer treatment, my spinal issue was obviously vastly worse because I was having chemotherapy. And again, applying for things like a blue badge was incredibly difficult, because I was perceived as being somebody who could walk, even though patently I could not, and I was in constant pain. And that was again an issue. But more importantly, and what I was really coming to, because it's quite difficult, I can't see people's reactions to this, so if you do want to react, please do, was the fact that my main study really after a lot of these experiences was on what it is like to be a disabled person in a workplace. And that many people, I don't want to talk too much about my own experience, but many people in the workplace either don't know that they're being bullied, for example, or are being bullied and have no real understanding of how to deal with that. And I spent quite a lot of time studying workplace bullying, and there's a very useful website called Bully Online, which is an excellent resource, and there are a number of other resources online that I'll put up perhaps during this webinar, because yes, under the Equality Act and all the rest of it, it's all very nice and what have you, but I actually experienced, I don't want to say it's bullying because I have to be careful what I say, because you know, one has to sometimes mitigate what they say, but the situation is that as a person with no hair, shall we say, who just had 5 months of chemo, I did in my workplace find myself being investigated by during a period in my life for something which I was ultimately completely cleared of. And the fact that I had no hair, had gone through 6 months of chemo, had a spinal condition and was working 9 hours a day, didn't influence anybody as to whether or not that was really a way to go. And the reason why that's relevant is that it's very important that people who are have disabilities are treated on a level playing field with everyone else, yes. That ableism does not mean that you are disabled to do things, that you should be put in a position where you're able to do things. But it doesn't mean that you can be treated in a situation where what you're not capable of, you are effectively told that you should be capable of, or are capable of, or issues may arise. And I think that for me, that was a real turning point in my life in really thinking about fairness in a larger way. And I don't know how long, Joanna, I've got. So yeah, I'm really just coming to the conclusion of that. So it's about bullying, it's about fairness, and that has led me on to being very active in my community to deal with things like fairness in funding for charities, because that's important, because small grassroots charities need to be funded, particularly if they deal with major issues. And I also to deal with my issues, which is also that obviously I identify as a Black person or a BIPOC person, and that I am entitled not to be discriminated against. And it's a double whammy when you have a disability that can't be seen, and you are also Black. You also have perceived stereotypical attitudes related to you if you do speak out. So I can speak up for myself, and sometimes those sort of stereotypical attitudes play out. And therefore, sometimes when I'm feeling extremely vulnerable, the level of strength that I'm able to muster can also play against me, because that's a stereotypical in terms of who I am as a Black person, whereas I'm supposed to be vulnerable as a disabled person, and I find myself sometimes in a real dilemma. Yeah. So that's probably all I want to say at this stage. So Joanna, probably.
Thank you very much, Viv. That was really honest, and thank you. Yeah. A really genuine and honest account of the experiences that you've faced, and obviously touching on some quite personal things that you've been through, both within your life, within your personal life, but also within your professional life. So thank you very much for being that open with us. I think it's raised a lot of questions for me that I would like to come to, but just based on the format of today, and it has in fact raised some questions in the chat, which is really brilliant. So what I'll do is I'll move on to the next person, and then we'll come back and speak to Viv about some of these questions that we have, if that's okay with you, Viv. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. So if I could come to you, Yannick, it would be brilliant if you could share a little bit about your experiences.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Joanna. I guess from a cultural perspective, where I call home, which is a country called Cameroon, southern Cameroon, some may know it by, or Ambazonia, others. I have to say thank you. Thank you to Culture Access. Thank you to you, Joanna. Thank you for today, really, for the work that I think you have all done up until now. And some of what I think I have personally experienced, and why I'm here, why I think this forum is important, why I think others that I've been to are, with regards to giving a voice to a set of people who are kind of been missing for a very, very long time. when it comes to representation, inclusivity, and diversity, etc., etc. My son is 7 years old. He's autistic. He's got special needs. He goes to school in the local area in Willow Dean. And it's what keeps me going from today till tomorrow. It's what helped me with, I guess, a young person's diagnosis or early childhood diagnosis of depression, which has kind of ran the course of my life up until now. Comes and goes daily, weekly. And so it's something that I've struggled with throughout in terms of, I guess, what people term the invisible elements of disability. With regards to the visible ones, I had an accident in 2017. It was a cycling accident, unfortunately, but it left me on my right knee completely tibia plateau, it's called, I'm told. I'm dislocated. It's like smashing an egg. And so I needed a knee replacement, more or less a scaffolding built from my knee to my ankle, with fluctuations in the weather, temperature, atmospheric temperature, and things like that. I get variations in pain on a daily basis. I did some damage to my spine as well. So, I mean, listening to you, Viv, earlier on, and from some of the work I know you do as well, I kind of wanted to kind of really draw some attention very early on. I was involved in another forum and I overheard somebody come up with this, so I can't really take credit. But it was with regards to the welfare with some of the people that are working in the community at the moment, whilst they have health conditions themselves. And these are within the community whereby a lot of the feedback has been the spirit that they have gravitated, whether it's helping a neighbor, helping this person, in our case, Cultural Access, giving us this platform. I mean, all of it counts. All of it is that community spirit and culture, which if my parents were here, they would hope I was having this conversation right now with you. And so I do think there's a lot that has to be said and a lot of gratitude. And I hope I use that word appropriately, given to the work that is already being done to give voices. I would like to extend a little bit further and suggest that as I'm passionate because of my son about autism and that even being looked at as a disability, again, I kind of want to draw and in my thinking as you were speaking, Viv, about this and what autism, or I guess in my case, in my son's case, special educational needs and how that impacts education from early on.
You're breaking up, Yannick.
How that can carry momentum into early adulthood. So the challenges that built in that system for young people. Again, I'm so happy to see Maya. Oh, sorry. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you better.
Yannick, we
can't see you.
But we can't hear you, and your video.
Are you able to hear me?
It's not a very good connection, Yannick.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I apologize. I would turn my video off. I have this problem. I'm not sure. I thought it was a location, but I'm in a different location and it's still existing. So I will do my best to share and interact as best as I can with what I have. But it was to sum up what I kind of wanted to draw attention for the time I have is with regards to special needs. Special needs and young people, and that being seen as a disability. I was kind of referring to what Viv said earlier on and how important that was to view people as people and view individuals as individuals and what they are and what their needs are not. And I guess she mentioned ableisms and disableisms or disabilities, either or. I think just a complete culture change and look needs to be looked at individuals as they are and what their needs are. they are. And I kind of say that from, and I hope that if anyone listening to this has family members with any children with special needs, get in touch with them and see how they're doing in terms of how this pandemic has unfolded for them, because that is a key step of support, and it is the first step of support. And that's probably more important than any statistics I can tell you now about what the challenges are or are not, because there's so many. It would be overwhelming. We probably don't have enough time, and I'll probably bore you just with statistics. But if you want to look at mental health, vulnerability, they are the sector, that main sector that has so many needs that are not being met. And that's what I would like to kind of leave you with. And thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Yannick. That was brilliant. And thank you for 2 points there, two different areas there. We are definitely going to come back to you now a little bit more about that. Before I come to you, Julie, I'd like to welcome Maya to speak about some of her experiences. Maya, how would you like to do this? Should I ask you some questions, or are you happy to share some of your own?
You can ask me some questions.
Okay. So what I'd like to start with, if that's okay, is just explaining a little bit about your experiences studying at the college that you were studying at. So if you could give us a bit of detail around the subject and how you found the support around you while you were studying.
So I studied digital film production at Ravensbourne. It was mostly coursework, but some of it was more like practice, like going making films, documentaries, or music videos. So what I found difficult was just help with equipment, because I have a disability called hemiplegia, and it causes one weakness on my left side of my body, so I can't do certain activities, or struggle or shy away to do it. For example, like camera work, I struggle with that because it's like with just with equipment and how heavy it is, going to different locations. I can't walk that far due to my disability. And I kind of found it hard just to like express myself, because I was scared what people might think if they judge me because of my disability, not for who I am. So I was like very like shy, sometimes very quiet, or sometimes I didn't want to do certain activities or go to different events because I'm scared that people might judge me. But overall, the support that I had, it was with my friends and just my tutor, really. And yeah.
And do you feel that the college were prepared for you, so they'd understood what support could have made some of those activities like the camera work?
Not at first, I don't think so. It's just when I expressed to my tutor, say I have a disability, I can't do this, and then they'll probably just help me a little bit, just to make it easier for me, or any support. But not at first. I just had to tell my tutor that I have a disability for them to understand.
And what support you needed?
Yeah.
So as an aspiring filmmaker then, because obviously you've spoken so well just then on some of the experiences that you've had and the barriers you faced, as an aspiring filmmaker, what would you say that the industry needs to be a bit more mindful of in terms of including individuals with a disability?
Just more patient. Be more patient with people that have a disability, whether it's visible, whether it's noticeable, just to understand where we're coming from and that we need more support. And it's okay to be different, and it might even take us longer to do stuff, but we can still do it. And I think that's what that needs to understand. It's just more support and more knowledge about that person that has a disability, and not to shut them out or push them to one side because they have a disability and they don't understand how to cope with it.
Absolutely. Do you think that there should be maybe some more resources for individuals to gain a bit more knowledge and education on how to understand different disabilities, and then ensure that everybody has what it is that they need to be successful?
Yeah, there needs to be more resources. There needs to be more support in there that disabled people can go to if they need help, and just need to express their feelings to someone that can understand them or just know what they're going through. And I think they need to put more facilities that can help disabled people in colleges, especially in secondary schools and universities.
And do you think whose responsibility, Maya, do you think it is to get to understand this? So, you know, you said that you had to tell your teacher, this is the support I need. But do you think it was your responsibility to do that, or do you think that the institution could have worked harder to understand and speak to you about what you may need? So whose responsibility do you think it is? Do you think it's that of the person with a disability, or do you think that it is where you work, you know, the workplace or the educational institution that you go to?
I think it should be both.
Okay.
Because it would be great that the workplace would know, or the tutors or the teachers should know, that there's some people that are different and it's okay to be different, and that, okay, we need to give more support and a little bit more attention to that individual person. And for, how can I say, and for us that have a disability, I think we should not to be scared to express it now. I think it's more important to express that we have a disability and we have struggles, but we also need help, and if it's okay if you can help us do that. So I think it's both, to be honest.
Okay, and I think thank you for that, because I think that is sometimes, certainly in my experience, with the work that I do with advising businesses on their diversity and inclusion and going in and transforming their culture, I have always encouraged the businesses to educate themselves on all the differences in individuals that they may attract to their organisation. And I think it's really important, actually, that if they want the best talent, that they understand what the barriers are for everyone, because everyone is the best talent, right? So it's about understanding what they can do to make sure that they can meet you at least halfway, in the first instance of understanding what it is that you might need. And then, as you say, Maya, then having that conversation with them if there's anything in addition to what they've maybe already done.
Yes.
that they can also do. What do you think, because you've spoken quite a lot about your disability, in terms of your ethnicity, how do you think that may have impacted on your aspirations to be a filmmaker so far?
I feel like there's not that, well, I don't know that many Black film directors or producers in the industry, especially disabled people. I don't feel like they're represented in a not positive, but more represented more in the industry. And I think it's based, especially being a Black female in the industry, it's quite hard, because it's like the film industry is like a man's world, kind of.
Yeah.
And what else?
That's okay. I think you make a really good point there, because you're absolutely right. It can feel like a man's world, especially when you look at some of the things that have come out in the media of late, and how some quite powerful males have been able to, you know, create very, yeah, unethical circumstances for some women to unfortunately have to operate in, and it's taken them a really long time to be able to find their voice and say, actually, that's not on, and for us to hold those people to account. And so I can imagine that if you're new to an industry and you're gaining insight and access to that, it can actually be quite a daunting thing to have to look at and think, goodness me, is this the industry for me? But I'm here to say that in spite of some of those individuals, I hope you know that it's not a man's world, and I hope you know that there is lots of opportunities for you, and where people won't let you in, I say you sort of bash down the door and you create something yourself. So they can't do that. So I know for a fact, Maya, I will be watching a film that you have made and directed in a very short while. And I think the whole panel agree on that, actually, that we're gonna see your work very soon. So thank you very much, Maya. Unless you wanted to say anything else, I'm gonna move on to Julie, unless you wanted to add something.
No, it's fine.
Okay. All right, thank you, Maya, that was brilliant. So Julie, would you like to share a little bit about your experiences before I open up the panel for discussion?
Absolutely. It's been really it's been a long journey for me, since the age of 17, actually. I was a young mum. Can you see me?
We can now. We lost you for a second.
Okay. I was a young mum, and at the age of 17, and there was nothing in the area for when I went back to work, like day nurseries or creche or whatever. And I found it really difficult to manage. I used to be a child protection officer after going to uni. God, it brings back some memories, all of this. But it brings back tough memories, so I'm going to skip for a little bit and then I'll come back to the beginning of my journey, because I think that is so important. It's quite poignant, actually, that some of the things Viv has said and some of the things Yannick has said, and May, you just blow me away because you remind me of me. You really do remind me of me. And you look the spitting image of my granddaughter. You really do. So, you know, girl, like, high five to everything you're doing. But going back to some of the areas that was discussed, Viv spoke about spinal impairments, and so did Yannick, and I don't know what it is about it, but I also have a spinal impairment, as well as having bipolar, rapid cycling bipolar. I live with lupus, and I have been in the mental health system, and I'm proud to sit as a governor on the NHS Foundation Trust board, and my role on that board has always been to make sure that the underpinning light of the foundation has got to be around voice, grassroots voices coming to the fore and leading on services. And that begins with co-production, and that is so important, that everything needs to be done together. You know, that we all bring our own expertise to the table, but everything needs to be done as a team. Now, today is a really special day for me because, yeah, we launched Start Change, our website. And Start Change, I want to tell you a little bit about it because I want to let you go on site and have a look at the site. But I have seen on my journey a lot of discriminatory practices, and as a woman also, it has been a really difficult journey for me, a really difficult journey to get to where I am now, and that's as a policy analyst to ministers. I work across the Cabinet Office advising ministers on things around health, social care, employment, education, immigration, housing, you name it. I've been it's like a system that I've been in, but it's been a discriminatory one. And I think it's been because of my race and my disability. And I'm talking about having not been born in a disabling world. I wasn't born in a disabling world, but I'm having to live one because society doesn't accept that I am a Black disabled person, that we actually exist. And I done some work some time ago. I know I'm jumping from one thing to the other, but I have to do it like this in order to actually speak to you. But I've done some work with the Office of National Statistics after the last census. And what I wanted to know was how many BAME disabled people there were, or BIPOC disabled people there were in every single local authority in the country. And places like, put it this way, every single figure shocked me, because I knew, and I still have that information, but I knew that by actually looking at numbers, like one local authority having 38,000 BAME disabled people, that's a local authority. How are these working? How are they managing to actually deal with that need, cope with that need? A lot of people in local authorities are not trained across intersectionality. They're not trained across things like, if you're a social worker, you don't necessarily know about direct payments, just because for the fact that, you know, you've actually been in the system quite a while, but you haven't had the training to update you on things like direct payments, on things like access to work, which supports disabled people back into employment. You know, there is so much going on, but it has left Black disabled people behind. Black disabled people have been left behind because the government has never resourced anything for us. I ran an organisation, Equality's National Council, and many of you would know. I'm sorry, I've got a really, really loud dog, only when someone comes to the door. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. But I know that when it comes to, sorry, I've just had a visitor. But when it comes to Black disabled people, I think race and disability is like a double whammy. I really do think that a lot more work's got to be done, research has got to be done on what it means to be someone of colour, of ethnicity, and live in a disabling world. What is the impact of that on a person when they're trying to get through any glass ceiling, whether it be one in employment, whether it be to get access to decent housing, whether it means getting a decent care package. It's a number of things. This, you know, intersectionality isn't just about us as human beings, as one person. Intersectionality is about everything. It's about different service providers. It's about different services working together as integrated, but allowing individuals to actually have their own voices. I think that's so important, and that's something that Black disabled people don't have at the moment. And that's why we had to launch Start Change, and why we started Start Change, because Start Change is an organisation that's going to have local circles. And local circles, sorry, I just need to, can you ask him to come out, please? Because I can't hear both things. Sorry. Our local circles will be based in grassroots areas, in the deepest of the grassroots we can go, just like Equality's National Council used to, and actually gather people together. You know, now it's all virtual, we're post-COVID, or we're still in it, whatever it is, we need to have resources to have dialogue as Black disabled people. We are the ones that understand what it is that what our needs are. We know what the unmet needs are towards us. And it's really important that, you know, that we recognise that all of us feel in a way that, you know, am I being discriminated against because of my race, or is it my disability, or is it my gender? You know, what is it? Is it my religion? Why are people treating me like this? And I've had that feeling. I have it all the time. I even have it when I work with throughout the civil service, you know, and I'm saying that I work throughout the civil service, but does the civil service really understand? Does it really, really understand that there is a huge need out there, that it needs to put resources in, financial resources in? Now, I've been having dialogue lately with Number 10 and people at the Cabinet Office, and they seem to be keen to get Start Change involved in quite a lot of areas of development of the new disability. There's going to be a national disability strategy, and it's really important that all Black, minority, ethnic, Asian, people of colour, whether you're from an LGBT community, whether you believe in or know what intersectionality is, you need to have an input in that strategy. You need to have an input. It's not until your voices are heard that people are going to know that you're there. Do not be afraid to talk. Do not be afraid to talk. Speak out. Please speak out. Tell us what the issues are around housing. Tell us what your access, you know, what is it? Like Maya was saying, you know, about access to services and the right equipment. No, it's wrong. She shouldn't have to be struggling like this. She's a young lady. She needs to be respected as somebody that has got a whole journey in front of her, which we all have her backs, don't we, everybody? And to see her develop as a young Black disabled woman, and that is a joy. It's an absolute joy to be able to see this happening in our community right now. Maya will be the type of people that Start Change want to speak with, but disabled people as a whole. I know that Yannick has so much to say, and Yannick reminds me of Black Men Moving Forward, a programme that I developed from Equality's National Council, working with the Ministry of Justice. You know, like, Viv just reminds me of me when it comes to pain, where pain can be so excruciating that it does affect your mental health, your mental well-being. It does affect it. And so it's really important. I just want one last bit of, you know, just to conclude, is that it's time now to pick up and say that Black disabled people's lives do matter, resources need to go into them, and we need to start having our say by the local circles. In Greenwich, you were lucky because in the census for Greenwich, compared to quite a lot of the local authorities, Greenwich only had 8,500 BAME disabled people. Well, could be more, because a lot of people do not fill in the census, or just they disappear, they're just not around or whatever. So it could be more than that. But Greenwich had 8,500, nearly 8,500, compared to other boroughs that were in the 52,000s, you know. And so what I'm saying is that we're not on our own. There's a lot of voices out there, a lot of views out there. I'm so passionate about getting those views come together and to start change once and for all.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. I think it was really, really informative. I would love to know more about Start Change, and just in case we don't get enough time to spend too much time on it, is there a place where people can look up?
Yes, startchange.co.uk.
Brilliant.
I'll put the link in.
Thank you, Julie. That would be really helpful. Thank you. Some of the things that Julie touched on there, and I can see there's an interest of this in the group, in the chat, sorry. It was a question I actually had, which was something I had picked up on as an observation, that I felt culturally within the Black community, we don't necessarily get enough support, whether that's through social care. And I wondered if you felt that as a community we're more reluctant to ask social care for that and the welfare system for some support, or whether it is that we do ask for it and unfortunately we're not given the right support. I wondered if I could ask you about that, if you have any comment to make on it.
I can't comment about social care. I'd say probably Julie and Yannick. And Julie, amazing things that you've said, which should just be no-brainers, might I add. But the point that I would make is, and I take this from Julie, Yannick, well, all the people who are here today, and this is what we are arguing with myself, Yannick, and Eleanor, is that people have to be at the top table. It's all very well talking about co-production. I've just worked on a project concerning a fund with another group, and a reasonably substantial fund, and getting people to understand that this can't work top down, okay? It must work from the grassroots up. It is, you can't have any group. Well, number one, funding. So number one, charities, non-governmental organisations, councils, anybody who grant funds must control that fund so that it understands where it's going, and it understands that it's going right to the grassroots. That means the donors of funds, local authorities, NGOs, non-governmental organisations must have people from the grassroots on their boards. And the problem that we have about privilege, we've talked a lot about privilege over the last while, is privilege is really about who has power. And the most important and significant thing from my point of view is that if you are a Black, a BIPOC person, Black, if you have Black and a disability, where is your power? And and whenever I go to any meetings, I say that, and people ask me for my lived experience, I ask them, well, what are you paying for this lived experience? What recognition are you giving me for this lived experience? It's all very well you sitting there on a salary. I'm a retired person who's got a disability. What are you giving for that? And the fact of the matter is, I think one of the things you were saying, Joanna, is about what people give, is that Black people and people at grassroots, it doesn't necessarily even have to be Black people, often don't know how to ask for the power that they're entitled to have. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much, Viv. I think you touched on a really good point there, because yeah, if you don't know the question, then you won't, or that you've even got the permission to ask, then you can remain in a place of where you're not able to get access to the answers that you need, because ultimately you're not even aware of the confidence. And I think that's really important. I could see someone has also said in the group that it does seem harder to get social care support for people of colour. Before I move on, I just wondered if anyone wanted to add to that point.
Yeah, I'd like to. Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. I think that there are issues across every section of service provision. I don't actually think I know, and so we do have a harder time. It is fact. It is fact. We have a harder time because we are Black, Indigenous people of colour. We are disabled, we are women, we are Black men, we are part of the community, we are from the LGBT community. You know, we are everything. We come as whole, all of us do. We come as whole. And I think that it's time now that when service providers talk about integrated care, that they look within and spread what it is that they know about integrated care and joining up health and well-being, social care, further education for young people. Like Yannick was talking about his son. I have a grandson who has autism. I have another child around me who self-harms. You know, and I know what's happening with young people on a grassroots level. I know what's going on, and it pains me to see it, but that's because we don't have any finances to resource what's rightly ours and what's rightly what we need. And so there's two things. There's around service provision, but there's also about voice and views in communities, taking that, like Viv says, from a grassroots level, but bringing it up nationally, right across the UK, and bringing it back down to the grassroots. That's how it's supposed to work. And it's been getting stuck for many, many, many years. You know, I've been in this business for a long time. I'm talking since the age of 17, I'm now 54. And believe you me, I've met some people, but I've also met people who have taken my ideas, who are public servants, civil servants, public servants, whatever you want to call them. Sorry, but I'll end there. I shall end. Can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much, Julie. That was excellent. Maya and Yannick, did you want to share anything, or otherwise I'll move on to another question, because I can see a few have come up in the group that I'd like to move to if everyone's happy with that. Okay, so one of the points that came up, which I think is a really good question, is Maya, obviously you spoke about you know, the relationship you had with tutors and the support that you were able to get from your tutors. I guess what I'm thinking about now is, can you talk about sort of positive conversations that you had with tutors, and when it was a bad experience and why? And that, I think that's coming from someone that has who has put the relevant support in for a number of students who have varying needs, and just wants to know a time when you've had a positive experience and what that dialogue has been like and what the experience has been, and then, you know, in comparison when it's not been positive.
So it's been mostly positive. I can't think of any bad experience, but there was just very, my tutor was very understanding, if I needed any help, he would always be there to help me, especially with my work, because it takes me longer to process stuff. So he would actually help me just to make sure that I understand anything more support in just like researching for coursework, and just probably if I had if I was feeling down or anything, he will make sure that I was okay and just stuff like that, basically.
And you think that as soon as you sort of raised that that you had these additional areas of support, that his response was absolutely, you know, this is what I'll do to help you? Is that what you found has been your experience? And how about school? Has it been
secondary school or just
yeah, so before you went on to Ravensbourne?
There was support in sixth form. I had like one-to-one support. Anything that I was worried about, I could go to them. So yeah, it's quite good.
Thank you. If anyone would like me to follow up on that question with anything further, then please do let me know, and I will make sure that I do that. I wanted to just ask another question that's come in actually, and it's around a couple of things really. The first one we've had in here is, can you explain the issues experienced regarding hidden and non-visible impairments? So, you know, incidences where, because your impairment is invisible, where you've experienced some issues. And if I could go to perhaps Yannick with that one. Yannick, are you there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still here. Thank you again, Joanna.
No.
It's hidden. I guess in my case, it's quite obscure. I do a lot of swimming, and so therefore that helps with things like arthritis, which is a frequent pain that I experience. Unless you knew me intimately on a day-to-day basis, you probably wouldn't ever know that. And it's not something I share, because you adapt sometimes, and I think that's a really hard question to answer, because I sometimes struggle to remind myself that this is actually causing me pain. It's almost as if, as part of my pain management mechanism, sometimes I've adapted to things that I shouldn't have, because I've had to mitigate unmet needs, if that makes sense. And so
oh, you're cutting out, Yannick. Just while Yannick gets his Wi-Fi and connection back, maybe I could ask you, Viv, when there is something that is hidden, I guess what I'd like to try and get to, in whichever way you feel comfortable, is just, what if someone can't see your disability, what issues does that bring up? So I could even talk of my own experience. So I struggle with anxiety, and therefore, because it's not sort of a broken arm, let's say, nobody really realizes it's going on. But if something was to happen suddenly, that's out of my sort of control, or that I didn't get an opportunity to foresee and then plan around, it can kind of throw me off course. And when perhaps it does throw me off course, in reality that might look like I'm a bit nervous, I look worried, I can't hide on my face that I'm worried. And so maybe I'm in a meeting I'm supposed to be very happy, and I'm presenting, I'm supposed to be really enthusiastic, and something's happened, and now I'm in this moment of, that wasn't supposed to go like that, and I wasn't expecting that to happen. And then I can panic, and perhaps in that moment people just think, she's not that interested anymore. And it's not that, it's that I'm just dealing with something else, but I can't show you that unless I say I have anxiety. So I'm just wondering if there are incidences where people have misunderstood you because they haven't understood what you're experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, I totally identify with what you're saying. It's the reverse in my case, I guess, in that I come across as being incredibly confident quite often, quite bolshy. You know, I've been called a titan, I've been called bolshy, I've been called lots of things, you know, even aggressive. Nice traditional words for the, what is it, the sapphire black woman, you know, I mean, really quite insulting. You know, abdicates, it sort of objectifies your beauty. You feel like a brick, you know, sort of, you know, fighter. You don't feel how perhaps you want to feel at certain moments, coupled with the fact that people can't see what you're going through. So, for example, classic examples are standing in events, you know, talking to people at events and thinking, I'm going to pass out in a minute, you know, and sort of having to then lean against something and slouch, which makes you look uninterested, exactly what you're saying. It's very often about that, or people not really understanding. So people telling people, I can't take that route to go to X, Y, or Z. One quick example from 2-second example, was due to go up to central London to, I think it was some sort of ice event. And I said, right, can we go X, Y, Z way? And another group of friends that I was with said, no, the shortest route is X, Y, Z way. And I said, no, I need to go the other way because of the stairs. And nothing would change their mind about the route. So, for example, you know, going through London Bridge is a nightmare. Thinking about travelling on a train is a nightmare. What happens if it stops and I'm standing is a nightmare. All these things, you don't look obvious. So I wouldn't ask somebody for a seat. I don't look like someone who could ask someone for a seat. It just goes on and on and on. So those are the sorts of examples of continually looking like you're okay when you could be actually in absolute agony. I mean, a lot of the time, particularly in the past when I couldn't pace myself, because I can pace myself more because of what I do now. But when I was within the working world, you know, I'd just want to lie flat, you know, on the floor. But apparently there is a woman, apparently I've read, on Google who, you know, her back's so bad, she actually just literally lies in various places, including on trains and buses and all sorts. And it's those kind of things. So yeah, I'm not being able to do that.
Thank you, Viv. It's interesting because I was really pleased that we were going to have individuals on this session that were going to talk to hidden experiences, because so my other half has autism, but also he also has Crohn's disease, which means that Crohn's disease can impact people in very different ways, but it's quite debilitating for him. It's not been a positive experience, and it hasn't made his life one of which he can carry on with without interruption. And often because he's a young man and he's sort of mid-30s, people just assume that he's fine and healthy, but actually there's lots of things that can make it difficult for him. So and I'm just trying to bring you some scenarios within the workplace in which this is quite important. So he often needs to use a bathroom, and therefore would and it can be very often that he might need to use a bathroom, and it needs to be a bathroom with a cubicle. So sometimes someone may say, oh, just run in that, you know, run in there and go to the toilet. But actually, without him telling you that I have a stoma bag and therefore I can't use a urinal, I need to use a toilet, which is quite a personal thing to share. It's very, very difficult for that conversation to happen. And if that then means that you need to take maybe a few more toilet breaks than others, no one will understand what's going on because you look perfectly fine. You're chatting away. And so no one, and even when you do explain what it is, people still don't really understand what it means. And therefore it can be really quite humiliating for the person to have to spell out why it is. I think also when we think about individuals with depression, and those that have other challenges with their mental health, sometimes you might have a pattern of being late for things. And I think sometimes we assume that's down to lack of professionalism, lack of enthusiasm, lack of engagement. And actually it might be more down to the fact that this individual is having to get their brain and their mind to a place of safety and positivity and calm in order to leave and venture onto transport and then go into the world of work. So some of these things, because they're not, as I say, a broken arm or something you can visibly see, we take for granted how it may be impacting the daily lives of individuals.
I totally agree with that. Just very, very quickly, one of the things that I do have to do sometimes when I have an increasing pain threshold, so it literally just comes up and then just carries on and carries on and carries on, doesn't get any less, is to plunge myself or put something freezing cold on myself, or plunge myself in a freezing cold bath. These are the sort of things people just don't even think of. What do you do if you can't control something that's just literally like a fire? It's just going through your body. And these are the sorts of things that people do have to deal with, and exactly what you're saying.
And I think it's just being mindful, not making assumptions, and keeping your mind open. And I think the reason I always say it's also the responsibility of an organisation to get to know the different things that people are experiencing and living with is because actually if we do that, then we won't be surprised and we'll spot things. We'll be able to identify behaviours that indicate actually there's something else going on here, not just what we see or what we assume is happening. So thank you for that question, because I think that was a really important one, and I wonder if any of you would like further questions on that or further dialogue on that. We'd be really happy to do that.
Is this around invisibility?
Yeah. Did you want to add something, Julie?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to say that that's a really it's true. There is invisibility, and we do try to express the fact that we need a service if we know where to get that service from in the first place. Without having the right support, you can't get a service, and you remain invisible in that sense. And then if you're talking about, you have a mental health, you live with mental health, and you have lived experience of that, it's really important that service providers, other people, everybody, that you can't see it. You cannot see it. You can't see some my impairments, but my God, do I go through it? So it's really important that we also add to invisible that we're often ignored. Our needs, people are aware of what our needs are. We've been telling them for years. There's been enough consultation. There's been enough books written. We've gone on for years and years and years, and I just think that the problem is definitely now become a human rights one. It's become a human rights one, and we put a paper into the UN 2 years ago, and we're waiting for the government to actually ratify the UNCRPD. Just look up those United Nations Committee on Rights of People with Disabilities. And I just really, really think that people know the problem in their communities. They know. Ignore it. We won't go away. We will not go away. So it's just important that, we recognise that not everybody's on our side, but at the same time, we've got each other, and we can network, and we can do what we need to do to be heard together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very, very much. I think you make a really good point there around being ignored, because I always say we're at the point now where information's at our fingertips. And so if you want to know how to support someone, it's pretty easy to Google something like that. I know I'm simplifying it there, but there is so much at the end of a bit of research if you're proactive about understanding that. There's a lot there. One of the things I wanted to talk about that came up earlier was around bullying, because I wonder if any of you, Yannick, please do contribute here also. I know that we can't see your camera, but we're very aware that you're with us. If anyone has any views that they'd like to mention around bullying and how often that is an experience for individuals with a disability and those from different ethnic minority backgrounds. In some of the work that we do, we have ensured that organisations have external and impartial consultants by which they can share some of the experiences that they're having, because actually when it's been addressed internally, you're up against the fact that some people are friends, some people assume, oh well, they didn't mean it like that, or are you sure you're not being sensitive? And a lot of this bullying can be written off, and I think that's down to not having very clear policies on that, but also not being an organisation that's particularly transparent and non-cliquey in terms of dealing with some of these things. So Viv, I know you touched on it, and I just wondered if you had any thoughts on how do we do something about bullying in the workplace?
Okay, so I think bullying in the workplace is about you empowering yourself. Number one, you have to understand if you're being bullied, and many people do not know what insidious creeping bullying is. Number two, you need to understand what a toxic workplace is. If you are in a toxic, non-changeable workplace, that culture will not change or is unlikely to change. And it may well be that the impact on your health is so catastrophic you have to consider whether or not you should remain. So I had a conversation with somebody recently who was in an organisation where they had been tipped to be made redundant, and noticed and discovered by accident that in fact every single person tipped to be redundant was black, and that the sort of lift of what was going on. But the problem is they felt they needed that job because it was money in the bank. They're not going to leave. That is going to impact their health. In order to deal with bullying, you need to look at several things. One of them is you need independent advice. Number two, you need to be in a union, or you need to have some sort of other support. You need to know your rights. You need to be insured. You can get insurance on your own, house insurance, this sort of thing, and that insures you for some levels of protection. And you need to protect your health, because bullying will attack all of those resources. And most often, and I'm sure you'll know this, Joanna, HR departments are not equipped. HR departments are there to protect an organisation. Julie will know this, Joanna will know this. But therefore, if you are running an organisation, you're someone running an organisation, you need to be looking at your organisation. You need to be identifying and proactively dealing with managers who don't know how to manage. Are you prepared to do that? People are frightened of doing that, frightened of dealing with problems in their organisation at the top. You need very clear policies, as Joanna says, that you can apply both up and down your organisation. It goes on and on.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Viv.
Thank you, Viv. Julie, did you want to come in there?
No, I just, like, how much more can we take? Viv is right. I just feel that it's time for us to go forward. It's time for us to come together. It's time for government to hear us. I'm trying to bring that voice in, but I need all of your voices too, and your views too. And I shall tell you how to do that, how you can do that. This isn't just about me, this is about all of us. And there is a social value thing in this, that we're not being valued. And and there's a class issue somewhere, as well as it being race and disability. So intersectionality is what we started with, and that's the journey that we need to go on.
Thank you. I'm really sorry, but obviously we're all working from home at the moment, and clearly something's being cooked downstairs because I'm sniffing and I'm really struggling, so I apologise. I have to keep taking my glasses off to clean them because they're crying, so I'm really sorry. I wanted to just touch on something that's obviously come up over the last couple of months, which is Black Lives Matter, the movement. And I think when we've spoken about, certainly in the instance of the work that we've been doing around the training and having conversations about ethnicity and race in the workplace, what I find is a voice that I often have to remind people to look out for and involve and invite and welcome is that of a disabled Black individual. Because in a majority of lots of the sort of, if you think about the law firms, the financial services, engineering and construction and other STEM areas, they're not necessarily sectors where those individuals are hugely represented. And I just wondered if there was any piece of advice that you might give people that are listening around how to give equity to our Black disabled individuals while the spotlight is on the Black experience through BLM. Maya, did you have any ideas on that, or would you like me to?
I would say that it's okay to be different, and we all matter, no matter what. And yeah, we should just keep on supporting disabled people, or Black people that are disabled, or just Black people in general.
How do you think, Maya, that if you like, society could introduce or welcome the voice of young people like yourselves into conversations around things like Black Lives Matter? How do we hear from a young Black disabled woman like you? How do they invite you to the table?
I would just say, just listen to us. That's all we want you guys or anyone to just listen, to understand where we're coming from and try and make a difference. That's what I think we should do.
Thank you, Maya. And how about you, Yannick? I know you spoke about your son earlier and his experiences with autism. And I just wondered, during this movement of Black Lives Matter, and we've spoke about, you know, racial inequity, we've spoken about privilege, we've spoken about fragility. If you've had any conversation on race, these are some of the things that have come up. I'm just wondering what you think that the movement could also do to consider the needs of an individual like your son with a neurodiverse challenge.
I think the problems have been highlighted by Julie and Viv really well. I think to join voices, support and representation everywhere are really, really good places to start. I think even within the BAME community of Greenwich, I do think we lack representation, cultural representation, not just in Greenwich and beyond, but I think it's up to us and the people we know, and by telling those people, maybe we can encourage others with capacity, with interest, to be part of some of these boards, because that then begins to give a bigger voice, a more inclusive voice.
Absolutely.
And I guess I'd see where that takes us. Who's to know what's to come out of that?
Thank you, Yannick. And how about Viv? Did you want to add to that?
Sorry, can you just say that again, because I was just answering somebody's question.
Yeah, no worries. It was just around, obviously Black Lives Matter, the movement has encouraged conversations that have brought up terms like white fragility, white privilege, anti-racism, allyship, etc. I was just wondering if you felt that the voice or the experiences of Black disabled people have featured much in any of the debate, and actually, if not, how we could encourage those conversations to involve the experiences of Black disabled individuals.
I think we're doing a pretty good job here, doing something which I wonder how often this is done. I mean, I've never seen it before, to be honest. Every Zoom that I go to, which is of somebody talking about, knowing about disability or even Black Lives Matter, doesn't seem to be representative necessarily of BIPOC people. I just think people, like exactly what Julie says, people from the grassroots need to speak out. You need not to be afraid, and this is how voices get heard. You need to stand up for yourself, and that is extremely hard if you're not a confident person. And I think Zoom has raised this opportunity because you can create these platforms now. I think Twitter is a fantastic space to get viewpoints out. Charities so white are doing unbelievable work in funding, etc., and challenging grassroots inequities in funding. And people don't realise this, but money talks, I'm afraid. In order to do all these things, everything pretty much all of us do here requires some level of money. Whether it be funding or some sort of enablement, etc., putting these sorts of things on, Black History Month, you name it. And you have to scrutinise with a really close eye where that money goes. You need to watch the money trail. The money trail quite often can disappear down an alleyway that never reaches a Black person. So these are the things in Black Lives Matter that you need to do, not just get together and talk, but follow the detail. Where does the detail take you of exactly where something starts and where it ends up? It's more complex than you think. If you start thinking it's easy, that's when things get woolly. And you also have a directed message. So my message in my local area is that funding must be fair. That's simple. Have a message, direct it, make a positive difference where you are, if you can.
Sorry, muted again. Thank you, Viv. I'm very conscious of time, and this is a question for you now, Eze. Are you able to stay 5 or so minutes longer, or do you need to head off?
Can you put that?
Sorry, I'm signing, so my sound is not on. Up to 6:45.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. In which case, there's two questions. There are 2 questions here. So if everyone else is able to just stay for another sort of 10 or so minutes, the other questions are, in the UK, the National Office of Statistics reports that 60% of COVID-19 deaths are people with disabilities. Is there a breakdown by the intersection of race and disability? And what should other countries do to avoid a similar result? Julie, is that one for you, do you think?
I think so. I was in a meeting with the Office of National Statistics 2 weeks ago. Remember, I've got an organisation, it's a social enterprise, it's called Start Change, and we are change makers, and all of you are, you know, I'd be so happy for you to join Start Change so that you can make the changes that we need done. But going back to, you know, it is very, 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 it is complex how to work with government, but at the same time with the ONS, Office of National Statistics, they do not have the figures on race and disability. I asked 2 weeks ago, and it's just, they don't have it. What they have is a hole, and I've been waiting from the Race Disparity Unit to get those figures, and and also the Commission on Race to get those figures. So as soon as I get them, you will have them.
So Julie, can I just check, is that down to black and disabled people not disclosing their ethnicity or not disclosing their disability? Is that why we're seeing this data isn't collected, or is it just not being stored and collected accurately?
Is this to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I don't think it's just not being collected.
Okay.
But it's there. It's got to be there, or part of it at least. If we go by how much people put in the census form, there are also a huge percentage of us that don't put ourselves on the census form. So whatever local authority is, you know, each local authority has those figures, but they do not crunch them down to race and disability and hand it over to the ONS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Julie. And then another question is, are there mainstream organisations that are genuinely inclusive of ethnic minorities with disabilities? So I think the question around that is, even organisations that are run by ethnic minorities, do we think that even they, are we sure that even they are inclusive of those with ethnic minorities with disabilities? Viv, did you want to answer that? Did you have a no?
No, I don't think
I thought you might have wanted to say something.
No, I don't think I can answer that question, which means if I can't, Julie, it looks like not as many as one would hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I ran Equality's National Council for 25 years, and a very, very big organisation of 24 in the team. That 24 was a mixture of mentors, advocates, student social workers, of which we were endorsed by 9 universities. There was volunteers, and we were all from BAME. You know, we're all BAME disabled people, and we're also carers, and I think that's important in our communities, in our structures, in our organisations, that we recognise the work of our community and the unpaid care that we provide to our families. Sometimes it's like let them look after their own, or they look after their own. Sometimes we have no choice but to, because we're not used to using residential care homes. And if we do need to use them, they need to be culturally aware, culturally accessible, and run by. And I think that it's so important that we develop an organisation which enriches the life of BAME disabled people across local authorities, across the regions, have regional ambassadors that feed upwards on a national level and come back down and speak to the grassroots. And I'd like to touch on something.
Please do, Julie.
I'd like to touch on something when it comes to young people. I think that it's so vital that we protect our youth. And it was because of our youth that I actually was pushed spiritually through myself to actually do start change. Because my nephew in-law, he was Jaden Moody, the kid on the moped who got killed last January. Because of Jaden, what happened to Jaden, and the state of the community at the moment, our young people, I think that we have to also recognise that they are also going through hell. And I think that we need to recognise this is where we need to use the social model of disability to say, hang on a minute, society is disabling me, not my impairment. Because when it comes to black men, why have they not got a platform? You know, they may have, you know, I've come across through our mentoring program, some black men that have dyslexia, but it's only because they've got dyslexia because no one ever supported them during school. No one ever gave them that special support. And so now as adults, they're either in the mental health system or in the mental health system in prison, or they're outside of prison and they're working really, really hard to keep their families together because there's a breakdown in the community, because there's a lack of finances going towards enhancing our lives. And I think that we need to be very strong and very firm, and we need to say we stand together, we stand as one, and we just need to go forward. And maybe Greenwich Council, we can trial as a pilot, and never say projects. I don't like that word, projects. We're not projects. We're not projects. You know, we're not projects. We do programs. We form programs. We develop programs as people. And what we need to do is to make sure that government hears what we're saying. They, Greenwich hears what we're saying, offer Greenwich the support that it needs, Greenwich Council, in order for us to support them develop their first network, maybe. Not that they didn't have a network before, but I think it would be good to start at Greenwich because they've wholeheartedly given us this space today. And they have ways that they need to grow. But I think that, you know, this is where the journey begins. Starts Change was launched today, the website. And I think Something Care is launching, and I think that that's so positive, so positive. And remember, like, it might be Black History Month, but every day's about Black history, every day.
Thank you, Julie. And that was a really powerful end to a brilliant discussion from all of you. I'd just like to say to all of you, if you would like to, please use the chat to put in any social media contacts and things like that if people would like to get in touch with you, any websites and details perhaps of your festival and things like that, and the work that you do. Maybe pop that in there so that people are aware. Maya, you might want to include the link to your film.
Absolutely.
So you can have a look at it or get access to it, or your Twitter handle or something. If there's anyone also on the webinar that has any opportunities that Maya might be able to get involved in, by all means share them with Maya also. She's at the start of her career and looking for opportunities. Sorry Maya, I hope you don't mind me just promoting you there, but if there's anyone that has access to people that might be able to support Maya, please do introduce her to them. And the last thing I'd just like to say is a huge thank you to our audience. Thank you for your questions. Thanks for spending your part of your evening with us, and to our brilliant speakers. For me, you've all been hugely inspiring. I think you're all very much sort of local heroes and leaders in your own right, and that we just thank God that we have people like you that are pushing the agenda and keeping the voices and experiences of disabled and Black people at the forefront and in the rooms where all the decisions are being made. So thank you for your tireless work in this space, and please, if any of us can be of assistance, share anything. I'd absolutely love to do that. I'll also put some details for me in here in case anyone wants to get in touch. Probably should do that now actually. Get in touch with me.
Can I say thank you very much, Joanna, and you can send the stuff to Culture Access and we will make sure that the channels are open. And apologies to people who weren't able to get in when they tried to get in. I don't understand. I thought I sent the link to everybody, but some people obviously had problems. And this is being recorded, and I will send it to send it out.
So thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Huge thank you to Abeyie, and I can't see the other lady's name, who have been amazing throughout this session and been offering sign language so that everybody can be involved and can participate. Thank you very much. I can't see the name, which is awful.
It's Nakisai.
Nakisai, thank you so much. I'm so sorry your name wasn't on the square. So thank you very much. And yes, and if you want to follow up with anything, please do with Eleanor.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 I'm gonna switch off.
Thank you.